Buried in a Lye Pit by Oldqfwfq. I love my father, but I was blessed to inherit his mind and not his looks. He used to joke that he was even stranger than he looked, and he looked odd. At one point, I'm sure he didn't. He roped my mom, after all. But when I knew him as Dad, he had taken his final form. Big, round head, protruding, distended gut. Skinny white legs, lots of nose hair, but I loved him. He was my dad. I speak about him past tense because he left the world a couple years ago. It's taken some time, but I'm finally getting around to going through some of the notebooks that he left behind. They aren't in any particular order, and most are just empty, but some are filled with writing. Some are filled with sketches from when he was an engineer at Cooper Union in the 60s, I think. But I recently found one with a name that I hadn't thought of in a long time, and with the name, a coordinate. I told you about the nose hair because the first time I heard about Artie, I had just pointed out to my dad that one of his nose hairs was escaping with great success. I asked, "Why don't you pluck it?" Even though my dad owned his strange look, I could tell my comment hurt him nevertheless. You should never pluck your nose hair, on principle. Haven't I ever told you about my cousin Artie? He plucked his nose hair and died, contracted some sort of disease and spontaneously combusted. At the time, I ate it up. Combusted? He nodded, caught a fever and was dead within a day. But after he died, his body temperature kept rising and rising. When this happened, the whole hospital went on lockdown. No one knew what to do, so they kept monitoring it. Up and up the body temperature went, and soon the government was called. Doctors and soldiers came to move Artie's corpse, but when they brought it outside, it burst into flames. So they did the only thing they knew would kill it: bury it in a lye pit somewhere. For a long time, I believed it was true because I trusted that my father wouldn't lie. Little did I know he had been keeping secrets from the whole family. Debts, family history, all sorts of hidden things. After my dad died, things were revealed. This is one of those stories I instantly discounted, which is why I was so surprised to find Artie's name again in my father's notebook, with coordinates no less. I come from an old Moravian family. I can trace my lineage back towards some of the earliest followers of Hus. When the sect fled Bavaria and came to the States, our family came too. My ancestors were at the first Christmas and established Bethlehem. You get the gist. We're old PA. I lived in Easton myself. My whole family is here. So the hospital where Artie died is here, and the coordinates in the book, after I looked them up on Google Maps, pointed me to a small island in the Lehigh. 40 degrees, 39 minutes, 05.7 seconds north, 75 degrees, 15 minutes, 21.3 seconds west. You can't see the pit from Google Maps, but it's there. Whichever hospital he died at must not exist anymore because none of the hospitals I called ever heard of a case like this. And there's no mention of his unusual death in the papers going back in the 20s. But I found the lye pit, and I found my dad's cousin on that island. I had to borrow my friend's canoe to get there. It wasn't the smoothest expedition. I haven't canoed since high school. But I made it out there. I tromped inland, a little south of where I had landed. The ground, it's mostly rocks and spongy moss. The trees on the island are particularly dense, tall pines that seem to bristle with drops kicked up from the river. It's all thoroughly soaked through, and I got very wet, but when I got to the center of the island, I saw the marks from the hasty excavation. Whether it was done by hand or by machine, there's a big hole. The rocks are thrown around haphazardly. The air suddenly smells of ozone. The hole and a lot of area around it is covered with white powder, and yet it's not enough. I got closer to take a look. It's still there. He's still there. For decades, Artie's body is still burning. The whole area is scorched. despite all the river water round. You can tell the pit used to be filled with liquid that's burned away, but Artie didn't. He was leathery, black from the lye and the fire, or so hot that it's ashen white, but you can still make out his face. It makes me reconsider some of the things my father said.